Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Dr. Mandal, welcome to the print. We have a few questions for you. The back series GDP data was revised yesterday. The government came out with a new set of numbers. The first set of data was released under your aegis in the month of July. So what do you have to say about that? Is the new data more accurate, or what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, no, the numbers that were put out in our report were, according to me, the best possible estimates that were possible that time based on the data then available. I have to explain to you the reason why these, GDP series are revised from time to time is the base changes, because the production structure economy changes.
Absolutely.
Now, this time the bigger additional problem was that even the source of data, especially the MCA 21 data, which they started using, a much better source, did not exist earlier. So you could not use that data source to go back.
Correct.
So you had to do some assumptions, adjustment, this and that's the nature of this game. Sure. And so we did it in a certain way, which was to assume that both, and this is all CSO data, we didn't produce any data, that the CSO estimate for 2004-05 for that base year and the 2011-12 data for the new base year, both CSO data were correct. Mm-hmm. We simply connected it in a way because the old base year data we projected turned out to be higher than the, the other way, the new base year turned out to be higher. So there's this gap. So we had to make that adjustment, and we did it in a way which we call the production shift approach, where these differences were incrementally distributed so that you match the 2004-05 base, yes, and you match the 2011-12 base, but they were connected in a way that was least disruptive, because whatever assumptions you make, there will be anomalies. Yes. The aggregate may be okay, then some sectoral will be a problem, or the GDP data may be okay, but then the balance of payments data doesn't match. Some anomalies you will find if you are doing this adjustment, which, as I was mentioning earlier, is a kind of jugaad exercise. So that's what we did. Now, apparently, some additional source of data and so on have been used. Now, it would have been better if they had been used. All these 3 years have passed if the new source of data had been used. If they were not available, certainly they would have been available by the time my committee was meeting, which only gave its report in July. Then all this unnecessary political controversy could have been completely avoided. But we are where we are. It was not given, and then within 2 months of our numbers, which, yes, it so happened purely coincidentally that this present regime didn't look so good by comparison with the previous and so on. Then within 2 months a new set of numbers come, so people are naturally asking questions, which is very unfortunate. But that being said, I do want to commend the CSO or MOSPI, the ministry, for having finally put out what they are calling an official set of data. Whatever the technicality, that's a different matter. Because we needed official statistics. Now, as for the numbers themselves, they are saying they use some new sources, but even then they've had to also use assumptions, adjustments. That's how national accounts are put together, especially in developing countries. So those, unless one examines those and the robustness of those, I do not want to comment. However, taking the numbers that they have now come out with at face value, they should be internally consistent, meaning they should add up in some sense.
But do you think this kind of a problem that we saw, first we have one set of data and then another, do you think this will sort of question our data mining, our data collation system?
Well, it is, as I was mentioning, it is unfortunate. I wish we could have our statistical system ring-fenced. The whole data generation, MOSPI in fact, could be ring-fenced in a way that is, I'm told, for instance, that the chief statistician in the UK, yes, has the same level rank as the Prime Minister of the country. And, he is completely beyond this kind of, so to give it to, statistics are very important. People don't realize it's very dry, boring, nobody pays, except when it, hits the headlines like this. But so much of our policy making, both in the public sector as well as for the corporate sector, based on numbers. So to preserve the integrity of this, of data and statistics, in a ring-fence way without all this political control is very important, I think.
Also, the other thing is Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Niti Aayog chief, at that point said there was no problem with the data. When you had published the data, there was no problem with the data. It was just that the growth rate during the UPA regime was sort of not the good growth rate, if I may say so. It was more like indiscriminate lending by the banks. So it boosted growth in a very artificial manner. But at the same time, yesterday we saw Dr. Kumar saying that, these data, these set of figures are more authentic. What do you have to say about that?
Well, two things. First, on your second point, as I said, I've gone through it very quickly, the new, the press release. They are saying that they have used some new sources of data, I think sales tax data and so on. If they have used new sources of data, then it can be better than the old source of data. I don't mean our estimates, but the CSO number that we had used, it may be an improvement, but it has to be examined. I mean, offhand I cannot say, but I'll take it at face value. As for the other point, which is a more important political policy point, the fiscal stimulus was given not only in India, it was given all over the world in every country. The G20 came together because of the crisis and actually did a very good job. And countries like China and India very quickly bounced back, partly because of the fiscal stimulus, but there was also a monetary, easing, what can be called quantitative easing. We did our own version of it. So that was, I think, necessary and desirable at that time, as everybody recognized. The issue is whether it should have been continued for as long as it did, because it then led into a period of high inflation and a lot of this whole looseness in bank credit and all that. It typically happens when the good news period, growth is going well, so everybody's in that kind of, there's a sense of, how should I say, celebratory mode, sab chalta hai kind of attitude. So that discipline should have been enforced earlier. That is what I would believe.
The other question is, when we met last time, you said the method, the formula that you had used to come up with the batch series GDP data was prefixed. Now, if that was so prefixed, as in it was approved and it was not your doing, it was approved by the committee and then you continued with the thing.
No, I'm not sure, because we were the committee. I was the chairman of the committee. It's a method that we determined. We looked at the problem. As I said, when you get into this situation, you have to look for a second best solution. You don't have the data that's being used now for that period. So how do you do it? You have to find some way of adjusting this data, or what we would call some jugaad arrangement. The question is, which is the best? There are different ways of doing it.
Do you think 3 months is good enough to come up with such a huge data collection again? Data collection?
I think they may have started this earlier, but the optics are very bad because, I mean, in July you were part of a committee which gave a report. You didn't give I'm talking about MOSPI. There was no note of dissent or anything. In fact, they were my secretariat for that committee report. It's put on the website for a month. Then suddenly, when the numbers don't look convenient, they put away somewhere else, and then a new set of numbers come within 2 months. So that's why people are asking questions. But I think they've been working at it for a longer period.
Okay.
They were doing their homework, but I wish the leadership then would have taken a call and said, put it out. For 3 years you don't put it out. You don't put it out even when you're part of this 1 year committee, my committee's thing. And then suddenly in 2 months all this, so that's why it's the way it has played out is not very nice. But we are where we are.
And do you think it also lacks transparency? Because a lot of people are saying that the way it has been put out actually goes on to reflect that there is no transparency and it has been done in a very one-sided manner.
I'm not sure about that. I don't know, because they have given a note. As I said, these are very technical detail, takes a long time.
Yes.
You go down to data at, 5 digits, 7 level of detail, and you have to examine this data, is it making sense, and so on. So I can't give you an answer that's why I'm saying technically I cannot comment on it, and I'm taking the data at face value. And assuming this correct, one just wants to see whether it's internally consistent or not. But as for its robustness, we'll have to see. It'll take time to go into it. But I don't think they just sort of cooked it up in 2 months. They were working at it. But I think they should have been bolder and finished the work and released it instead of delaying it for 3 years. And then even our committee was given this job.
Yes.
Since they were get it out, even then they would not, I think they were being a bit lackadaisical. For whatever reason, maybe because those initial numbers made the government uncomfortable, they took it on as a fast-track job. And maybe the present...
Do you mean to say that there was another, set of people working on this?
No, the same set of people were working on it. They were part of my committee. That's
yeah, but they were working with you and on a separate...
No. Within the committee, you have different people doing, and then you bring it all together.
Yes.
Those who are doing this econometric thing finished their work. The CSO didn't. They were taking time. And so on, so they couldn't produce these numbers for the public domain. Then what, because, but they have a process. There's something like, I think it's called the Advisory Committee on National Accounts. They look at it and so on, and they did call a couple of meetings. So it's not as though they just cooked it up on their own and put it out. That would be unfair. But as to its technical robustness, I cannot comment because I have not seen it. What would be nice if the chair of that advisory committee, Professor Vishwanath Goldar or somebody, were to give his comment saying these numbers are fine. Because if you say yourself, the government says these numbers are good, obviously you will say it's good, but it's nice to have another independent person, somebody like the chairman of that advisory committee, to give their views. And it may not be that it's all bad or it's all good, maybe that it's by and large good, but there is some room for improvement.
The one last question. A lot of people have asked, how is it possible that just a few figures have come down while the others have stayed almost the same? I mean, basically the growth rate during the UPA time seems to have come down, while the growth rate, the figures that have been projected during the NDA time seems to be almost...
No, there is one series from 11-12 onwards that is not part of this whole controversy. That has remained what it is. The whole issue is about the data up to 11-12. There was a missing back series. That back series was, because it was not there, so we produced it. And now they have come out with another back series based on, according to their press release, some new numbers and so forth. And that's what I think we need to look at. But internally, I think there are some problems, because when you have a sharp dip in growth, along with only a slight reduction in investment and a very sharp increase actually in the net exports, that is net of imports and so on, that doesn't add up. Similarly, the following year, when you got a very sharp recovery, and that shows up in others, our series also, in the old series and so on. But then you find that, in fact, that year the net exports, a big dip of minus 12%, and the investment rate continues to come down. Of course, there was that stimulus that we talked about earlier. So does that 2% stimulus account for this huge increase in growth, or? So I think these questions will be asked, because these data is now going to be scrutinized with great detail with experts from different fields. And I think MOSPI should be prepared to respond to those questions.
Right. Thank you so much, sir.
You're most welcome.